In central Texas lies a stunning natural wonder called Jacob's Well. It's for daredevils that strap scuba gear on and dive down through Jacob's Well through a 10-foot wide shaft that leads to one of the most intricate and dangerous underwater cave systems in the world. Jacob's Well is broken up into 4 chambers, and each of the chambers gets smaller and they get darker because you're losing sunlight, and they just become overall much more difficult to navigate the deeper you go. Any diver that's going to be in Jacob's Well has to be aware when you are in the second chamber on your ascent to not go down the false chimney. The false chimney is this opening that looks exactly like the main exit out of the second chamber into the first chamber, but it's not. It's a dead end that loops around before you hit a wall, and you gotta go all the way back out. So hopefully you have enough air at that point. In 1983, 24-year-old college students Richard Patton and Clark McConnell entered Jacob's Well around 8:30 p.m. They were both experienced scuba divers. They were in an advanced scuba diver class with all the certifications for that. They had dove Jacob's Well before, and they wanted to check out the 4th chamber. They went through that initial shaft into the 1st chamber. They continued into the tunnel that was the 2nd chamber. They wriggled their way into the 3rd chamber, and Richard Patton was the first one to go into the 4th chamber. He removed his tanks and pushed them inside of this opening, and then he began headfirst to slither inside of this 4th chamber opening while Clark waited. And Clark would later say that as soon as Richard had pushed his way and had actually made it into the 4th chamber, Richard comes screaming up back out of the 4th chamber. And Clark realizes that he doesn't have a mouthpiece in. He doesn't have scuba tanks on. Richard is desperately trying to wriggle his way out on a breath hold because he's dropped his tanks, and he's reaching for Clark to help him get pulled through this hole, and he can barely get out of this hole. And as soon as he gets free, Clark takes his mouthpiece off and he jams it into Richard's mouth. And so they begin buddy breathing. One guy breathes while the other guy holds his breath, and then they reverse that back and forth, back and forth. So the pair calms down, and they're kicking their way up, and they get back into the 3rd chamber. They're kicking it out, and then their heads hit the wall. And they realize they've gone down the false chimney, and what's even worse is they hear that awful ka-tung, which means you have no air in your tanks. Clark, who had taken a full breath before this had happened, he immediately turns and starts swimming and manages to get out of the false chimney and makes it to the surface before he drowns. But Richard wasn't as lucky. His final few moments were spent in total darkness with silt kicked up all around him. He's got no air, he's got no idea where to go, and he's desperately trying to swim up, but he keeps hitting the wall of the false chimney before ultimately drowning.